Okay, should be live. Please hit the like button. Hit the bell notification if you uh, need to update your settings to get all alerts, I guess, for every time we go live. If you're not watching this live, if you are watching this live, then you probably already have that setting set up, which I really appreciate. But please hit the like button. And always, I encourage people to share these streams if they find them valuable, and subscribe if you haven't. Really helps. Comment down below any thoughts you have throughout this, any questions that you have throughout this. If you're watching live, please comment them in the live chat. And yeah, we will get started. But it's once a month I like to do an AMA video, like Ask Me Anything type of video, where you guys drive the um, conversation, especially because I can ramble on and ignore the chat sometimes for too long. Um, so we do these once a month, and they're usually shorter also, which is probably a nice break from the other streams, which they've been quite long lately. I think the last one was over 4 hours, and the one before that was almost 4 hours. So that's a long stream. I really appreciate everybody who's committed. But it was really good, I think. And it was about Alex O'Connor and Robert Lawrence Kuhn's discussion on his Landscape of Consciousness website. So that's something that I kind of want to explore more tonight while we're on the AMA video. I ended up, again, speaking about a lot of things in the last stream, and we did look at it a little bit, but I wanted to look at it more and kind of explore what it and learn how to use it better. And so that's kind of what I wanted to do tonight. There's a few different resources that I've used, websites that I've used to, I guess, just in my research of symmetry and theories of everything and physics and just all the topics that are relevant to sentient singularity theory. And I like to go over them every now and then and share them with you guys. And so one of them is going to be probably this Closer to Truth map, this right here, which is a landscape of consciousness theories. And it's, you can explore it in all these different ways. Goldstein's mind-body problem. What? That's not me. That's a different Goldstein. What are the odds? Philosopher and novelist Rebecca Goldstein centers the mind-body problem around the nature of the person with two distinct kinds of descriptions: our physical bodies and brains, which science can, in principle, analyze completely, and our inner thoughts, perceptions, emotions, streams, which science can never access completely. Yeah, she's right. But I guess that would be. I think I've actually watched a stream of hers that she's done, maybe with Curt. Interesting. But there's just a bunch of different ways of looking at this interactive visualization. This is pretty cool. Dang, look at that. That's cool. I like that he did this project. It's rare that there's people who are really dedicated to really honestly exploring so many of these theories and trying to organize them and make sense of them all in a way that is honest. And gosh, if you hover over something, it seems to, any connection it shows you. But if you, let's hover over this, it shows you all the, I think these are direct connections. Levin's technological approach to mind everywhere. Interesting. I don't know where sentient singularity theory would be on this, but information category. Yeah, fascinating. We're going to look at this a little bit more tonight. Another website that I love looking at is Numbermatics. Numbermatics. This website. It's got a lot of pop-ups, unfortunately, and ads, but you just search a number, let's say $3.99, and it will show you. So this got too many ads, honestly, but it will show you the symmetry pattern, kind of a 2D representation of the symmetry pattern of it, according to its prime factors and its divisors. And it gives you a bunch of mathematical information kind of describing the number, like the structure of the number and the components of the number. It has 8 divisors. This number pops up in my work, and all of these numbers also pop up in my models as well, which is fast. I mean, it makes sense, but it's just fascinating. It's just very cool. Very cool website. And another one that is interesting, but this is more linked to like Garrett Lacey's work. If you're familiar, he's trying to construct a model that connects kind of, if I understand it correctly, the symmetry structure of the standard model with general relativity in the context of E8, which is it's a mathematical structure. E8 Lacey, and he has a fascinating website. He had a TED talk about it, and he did a paper called "An Exceptionally Simple Theory of Everything," and it gained a lot of attention, but it hasn't really led to anything. But it is E8 is a beautiful shape. So this is E8. Like this. Look at that. That's pretty neat. Look at that. And so he was looking at the symmetry patterns in this, and I'm not saying he would describe it like that, but that is what he was doing. And he was just article explorer. E8. I used to have this bookmarked. Here we go. So has each of these symbols or shapes represents different particles, and this would be, look at that, whoa, fascinating. And you could be like, yay, and look at it from all these different angles, different perspectives. And you can see the symmetry patterns in it from different perspectives. So you could be like E6. E7, strong hypercharge. Interesting. It's just like, feel like this has been updated a little bit since the last time I was on here. Definitely has. It's good. It's good to like update your work a little bit. It's interesting. This looks like a religious symbol, like the flower of life. And if you do like, here, let's see. he's definitely updated this because some of the shapes are different, but it's very interesting to just take a look at. Symmetry is how we how we understand the world because it is how we orient. Um, it is the only way to begin the process of orientation, to figure out relationships and connections between things. To figure out where you are, what something is to figure out how it relates to other things. To figure out even who you are is to figure out how you relate to other people, and not just people as in humans, but also God and other beings, and that's how we figure out who we are, and is and then we explore that through the choices that we make within that context. But um, it's interesting. My wife and I have been married 5 years. It was our 5 year anniversary this week, and we live streamed the wedding to this channel. And uh, but what's fascinating is uh, when I hold on one second. When I first met my wife, I met my wife on Tinder, and it was the I only met up with three people ever from Tinder, and one of them I met up with and got a beer once at a bar, and then that was it. She went home and I went home, not together. And then I met another girl at a Starbucks, and she went home and I went home, not together. And then I saw my wife. I swiped right, and I just knew like something was different about this one, and we had a similar interest, which was photography. And she was a Canon. She had a Canon camera, and I had a Nikon, and they're like rivals. And so I sent her a message saying like something about, oh, like you're a Canon shooter, but I guess I'll like find a way to overlook it or something like that. And that was the first thing I said. And we ended up meeting up for dinner in downtown LA, and we were the last people there. And it's funny because actually, like, I it was a it was a restaurant that's closed now, but it was smack in the middle of downtown LA, and there's no parking. And I parked in a tunnel underneath it. And when I got out of the tunnel, because I couldn't get to it on my GPS because it said I had arrived, but really I was completely underneath it inside this giant tunnel. And so I just parked on the street inside this giant tunnel under the center of downtown LA. And when I got out, the entire ground was homeless people covering the ground completely, all laying down. And I didn't even see them because there were so many of them that they were like puzzle pieces fitting together. And so I had to step over and in between all these homeless people and try, as quickly as possible, to try and get through this tunnel and then go all the way back around and to the restaurant, which was above me. So I ran, and I got to the restaurant and saw the guy the guy who seats you. I don't want to say hostess because that's a girl, but the restaurant host, the guy who seats you, who's usually a girl, but it was a guy, and I could tell he was hitting on her as she was waiting. And so I ran even faster, and we sit down, and I can't even speak because I can't catch my breath, and I'm sweating profusely because I am so hot, and I had been running so much. And so I just said to her in the middle of her, like, just kind of introducing herself, I was like, hold on 1 second. And I left and went to the bathroom, patted myself down, splashed cold water on my face, came back, and I was like, sorry, I ran here. And we talked for the rest of the night. We were the last people in the restaurant. And what the thing that stood out to me about this is we had so many similarities, but also they were like opposites. Like she's a dancer, I'm a martial artist. They are the same moves, but completely different goals and perspectives. Um, I'm very pale, and she's black. um, I but I'm the I'm a man, obviously, and she's a woman, and obviously that's like a given, or should be a given, um, but it is a symmetry. It's a that is still present. We just don't think about it, but it's actually like probably the most fundamental symmetry that we have with other people. And but I noticed though that she's the oldest of like four in her family, and I am too. And in my house, it's three boys and then a girl, and in her house it was like three boys and then three girls and then a boy. And it was just like very, very all these like similarities, but they were like it was like a mirror, and I noticed it immediately. And I wasn't into any of this stuff. I was like an atheist, like materialist, um, and but I noticed this immediately, and I left the restaurant, and I I think my brother called me, and well, I was in the car leaving the date, and she went home, and I went home, not together, and and he was like, "How's it going? How's your week?" And I was like, "Pretty good. I just went on a date." And he was like, "How did it go?" And I said, "Really well, actually. Like, I know this sounds crazy, but I have a weird feeling that I might marry that girl." And uh, I did marry that girl exactly how many years later? We got married in 2021. We met in 2014, so 7 years. 14, no, 2015. So 2015 to 2016, 2016, 2017, 2017 to 2018, 2018 to 2019, 2019 to 2020. 6 years. She's in the comments right now or watching this. If she is, she's like, gosh, you don't know how many years we dated until we got married. I know that we got married though on the same day that um we met. It was just 6 years later to the day. And the date we got married was 7/14/21, which is seven is it's 1/3, 2/3, 3/3 basically. Um, I mean it's seven is 14 divided by 7 is 2, and 21 divided by 7 is 3. So yeah, it's 1/3, 2/3, 3/3 basically. It's just very interesting, which adds up to 42, which is weird. I mean, there's just a lot of weird symmetries that I've picked up on regarding our relationship, and you can't know what these things mean always, but they are there, and they are not just meaningless. But that doesn't mean that you know what they mean. You can think you do, and then you're going to be wrong, and uh, that happens. But you shouldn't ignore the symmetries that you see, because they do inform you sometimes. And it wasn't like I had so much fun with her, and that's why I was like, I think I'm gonna marry that girl, even though we did have a great time. I mean, we were the last people in the restaurant. It was the symmetries that were so odd, and I'd never seen that before. And I don't know, that we were similar in all the ways that you would need to be, and also different in the ways that you need to be. It's fascinating. She was a theist. I was not. That's another thing that was, you would think that wouldn't work, but I ended up becoming a theist, not because of her, but just, you know, worked out that way. But yeah, now we've been dating for, well, we've been to, I've ever since, it has been how many years since then? Like 11, 11 years. Oh my gosh. The best day, my wife commented, yes. 6. Oh my gosh. So yeah, 2015 to, yeah, 11 years. That's crazy. That's crazy. I live streamed our wedding on this channel in 2021. I started this channel in 2020. It's been 6 years since I started this channel. It's been 5 years since we got married. That's wild. We did a live stream that was like an AMA on like Love and Marriage on Valentine's Day one year, and you can search it. Um, I'd like to do that again at some point with her, but it's just been when you have a toddler, it changes things a little bit. You have to re readjust. But yeah, my daughter, no, like it's crazy. I was rewatching some of the we rewatched our wedding stream that's on here on our anniversary, and I was showing it to my daughter, and then I watched a little bit of our AMA, our like AMA video that we did on Love and Marriage, and we had we were trying to we got pregnant like immediately after we got married, and like the wedding night basically, uh and we ended up having like three miscarriages before we were able to have my daughter, and um thank God we have her, and a baby boy on the way. But uh and I was just like watching these streams and thinking about like back to those times, and then looking at where I'm at now, and like it's uh it's just it gives you perspective. It gives you the ability to back up and like see uh your life a little bit, and kind of also just gives you it just gives you more information about yourself, and about the time that we have, and the time that we use, and to kind of have at least photos, and or a journal, or a video live stream to look back on, or something that brings you back. I found a basically like a journal um, that I had that was uh, a booklet that I for a class that I was taking at the time, and in it was like a religion a class it was a Judaism class, but uh, and it was from before I got married, be way before we got married. It was from like 2017, so almost 10 years ago. 2016 maybe, and I was reading uh, in one of the like things that you're supposed to do in the class is to write your description of the of theology as best you understand. Yeah, like your theology that you believe in, like write it. And I wrote it, and I read it through it the other day, and that one just like blew my mind to see how much I've changed in my language since then. And because I was just becoming a theist, that's why I took the class. I was like, wow, I kind of am having all these like revelations about God, and I need to like see what religion is all about. And I explored, I researched most of them, um, and uh, but this in this class you had to write that. And it's just those types of things are important sometimes, because it's hard, it's easy to get stuck and feel like, or for time to pass and you feel like you haven't made progress on the things that you want, and sometimes you haven't, but like you've made so much progress on all these other things that you kind of forgot about because they're not top of mind. But those things bring you back, those time capsules bring you back, that you see what your what was what your focus was at the time, how it's changed. My language on how I discuss God and the cosmos and physics and consciousness has changed so much since then. But there was some things that I wrote that they had like little glimmers of brilliance. I wrote something like uh, man is made in the image of God, and God is made in the image of choice, which I wouldn't say that today, but it was you could tell that was trying to describe the recognition that like agency and the ability to make choices and have will of your own is like the defining characteristic of being, of someoneness, and we are someone and God is someone. Um, Being in the image of God doesn't necessarily mean like being a human, I don't think that's what it's meant by it. But it's someone, and that God is someone, we are someone. But it was also interesting. I didn't capitalize the word God, and I I'm very much about like always do that now. Even if I'm using another word for God, um uh like if I say um existence, I'll be capital E existence if I'm talking about God. Or um uh you know, I don't know, creator, I would use capital C. And just to because it's a person, it's someone that you're talking about, and you're giving a title or name to this someone, and we capitalize, your name when we write, we capitalize my name when we write, capitalize God, um, the name, whatever name we use for God, and yeah, it's interesting because we if we people will say like we don't know God's name. It's like God doesn't have a name that we didn't give him. No one has a name that they weren't given. Yes, you can later on change your name and choose it, whatever, but like nobody chose the name that their first name. Which is actually I would say, is their name. I'm not saying you can't change your name at all, but it's not that your first name is not no longer your name. It's just like you have a second name. It's like Kanye West and what is it? Yeezus, or like whatever he changed his name to legally. And it's like his name is still Kanye West also. And but your name is who others refer to you as. If you're the only one who exists, there's no reason for a name. You don't need a name because there's nobody to call you. It's just you and you. So a name is something that really it's not meant to be something that we choose for ourselves, necessarily. It's something that that is chosen for us in at least our first name. My daughter has like learned that Dada also has a name that's not Dada or Daddy, and she's like, it gets all nervous saying it. I'm like, what's Dada's name? She'll be like, Tyler. Like we'll be like, what's Mama's name? She's like, Paulina. Like she gets all like shy about it, and because it's like so awkward for her, she never calls us that because that's not our name to her. That's not who we are to her. We are Dada and Mama, and also now Daddy and Mommy, which is like starting to change from Dada and Mama to Daddy and Mommy, and then eventually it'll be Dad and Mom, and hopefully never Tyler and Paulina, because that means their kid is usually pretty pissed at you if they're calling you by your first name. But it is interesting that like I remember when I started calling my parents Dad and Mom instead of Daddy and Mommy. I don't remember calling them Dada and Mama. That was like too early. But I remember calling them Daddy and Mommy and then changing it to Dada and Mama because I didn't want to I felt like I was like Daddy and Mommy was immature. And I always wondered like what they thought when I just one day started calling them Dad and Mom. And now I live it. I live the other side of it. And there's definitely like a reason why that something that motivates them to change the name a little bit. But but the thing is that what it is also is it is a slight shift in who you are to them. As they get older, you become something different to them. Also, something that's this you still keep you're their parent. That doesn't change, but like how they relate to you, what they need you, meaning what they need you for, does expand and shift. And as it happens, like the name that they call you shifts. It's fascinating. And uh, the name that we call God can change, depending on the moment. It's the name that we give to God always. That is God's name, just like your name is the name that was given to you. I didn't choose the name Dada even. It's like my daughter gave that name to me, really. Like, yes, it was expected, but like, it's her that calls me that. And it's if somebody calls you by a name, they are giving you that name. There's no difference. It's not like a naming ceremony, which you can. There are those, as well. But and you can change your name a little bit, add a name to yourself, but it's like in a different context, always. It's fascinating. Names. My name Tyler means tiler, like somebody who lays tile. And Goldstein means goldstone, which kind of you could say also kind of means like like uh unchanging foundation, like eternal, not I don't want to say eternal foundation, but like maybe it kind of represents that, like gold, it doesn't tarnish, and so it stays the same forever. And it's like the value of gold is that it's non-reactive for the most part, and it doesn't tarnish, and it's non-reactive in a natural context for us. You have to like put it in chlorine or something like that, but uh, and I was always like, "Why? That doesn't make any sense." But if you look at other people like Steve Jobs, Jobs makes sense to the person who created like Apple, and Elon Musk. That seems to make sense for who he is. And means tree in Hebrew, so like Musk is like masculine tree. And what's fascinating is like all of his companies are connected to each other, very very much so. And will increasingly be seen over time. But uh, it's like SpaceX is like a rocket, which is like about as masculine a shape as you could get, I guess you could say, and expanding into the abyss. But um, and masculine tree, something like that seems to make sense. There's so many names that are like that, and I was like, like Tyler Goldstein. I don't tile anything. And then once I was looking at my um, my work on sentient singularity theory, and I was like, whoa, I do tile, and because these are called Excel tiles, and my goal is to like the map the the cosmos into a tile, into a bunch of tiles, which is like sounds a lot like the tiler of the eternal foundation or something like that. It's fascinating, and it kind of like hit me, and I was like, whoa, that's weird. It's weird. Whatever name you have been given is even has a lot. It tells a lot about you. I used to hate my name Tyler. I thought of it was sounded like a little kid's name, because I didn't know any adults named Tyler when I was a kid, but I knew only kids named Tyler. And I was like, that's a kid's name. I'm gonna grow up and have the name Tyler, and everybody's gonna be like, that's a kid's name. But then everybody who was a kid named Tyler grew up, and now it's not an uncommon name for an adult. So context changed, and I was wrong. But yeah, think about your name. It's in it, think about it kind of is represents like your place in the manifold. But Anyways, please hit the like button if you find this interesting. Comment any questions that you have in the live chat. This is supposed to be for you guys, and it's this is like the first time I have like the least active live chat so far that we've had. So I'm not ignoring the chat if you're watching this not live. I'm just checking to make sure the stream is working even. Yeah, it is. Okay. Yeah, but yeah, fascinating. But let's look at this. More of this interactive map. High scholarly interest. More falsifiable. Less falsifiable. Ancient. Where's like theistic? Emergence is the claim that qualitatively new, even radically novel properties in biological systems and psychological states arise from physical properties governed entirely by the laws of physics. See, this is what I just don't like, these terms, these ism terms. Materialism, emergence is basically an ism. Emergencism, panpsychism is the theory that phenomenal consciousness exists because physical ultimates, fundamental physics, have phenomenal or proto. I can never say it when I'm trying to say it like in front of people. I can say it privately. Or proto-phenomenal properties. This means that the essence of mentality, awareness, experience is a primitive, non-reducible feature of each and every part or aspect of physical reality, similar to the fundamental fields and particles in physics. Everywhere there is energy, matter. Perhaps everywhere there is even space-time. Panpsychism says that there is also something of consciousness. Everything that exists has a kind of inherent proto-consciousness, which in certain aggregates and under certain conditions can generate inner awareness and experience. See, this is like, what does this mean even? Is a simple basic building block of awareness. Think of it like Lego bricks. You cannot build a full castle, human consciousness, with just one brick. But without those basic bricks, you cannot build anything at all. If anything is... That doesn't make sense, though. Like, what it is that... Like, you have... Perspectives are the building blocks of consciousness, but they're not the building blocks. They are... like the strings of it, and consciousness is like, or sentience is like a knot of these strings. But you can't have the knot without the strings, and you can't have the strings really without the knot, because the strings come from the knot and back into the knot, kind of like this. So there's no like strings coming from outside it, and it's just a self-contained knot of perspectives that have a certain symmetry structure to them. And the most fundamental, I guess you could say, perspectives of sentience are these four primary perspectives in sentient singularity theory: inside, outside, separate, and oneness, that are co-defining and simultaneously generative of each other. To be aware of one of these implies and requires the awareness of all four. If you're aware of what's outside, then you're aware of what it would mean to be inside. If you're aware of what's outside and inside, then you're aware of what it would mean for something to be separate from something else, which means you're also aware of what it would mean for something to be one with something and not separate from it. And because you're aware of what is the boundaries of something, but and you have that perspective that you give to things. that you define, but you are these perspectives also are the foundation of your perception and understanding of the boundaries of being as well, which is someone, which is, it's not something, it's someone, and that includes other beings, other someones, and most fundamentally your own self, your own someone. You know what is one with you, who you are, and you are you know you are someone, so you know what it means to have that oneness. But you also know that you're someone, and that there are beings that, or you assume that there are beings, but you are aware that there are structures at least that are beyond you, and not, they are separate from you, because you know what is part of you and you know what is separate from you, because you know who you know you are someone, you know what is not part of your someoneness, and but you're also aware of what is inside of you versus what is outside of you, even mentally. Information that comes from outside or of you is really like information that you don't have complete dominion over, and you don't have mental dominion over it. Like the color of the door over there, if I imagine the door in my head, I have mental dominion over it. It's inside my mentality, and I can change it to red. But I can imagine the door being red, but I can't just change it on my own thoughts. God probably can, but I cannot, because we are, inside the mind of God. But for his thoughts to have like real coherence and meaning, like he has to, there's logic there. But I think a miracle, like what miracles that are described in theological traditions in the past, is God imagined basically something, but it's his imagination is our reality. And but it's also, it's not even imagining to him. It's like the Matrix, if the Matrix could think, when changes something in the Matrix. If you watch the Matrix, there's a part where he has deja vu, or sees a cat walk by twice, and he's like, deja vu, and they're like, what did you say? It's like, I just saw a cat, and then I saw the same cat, I think. And they were like, deja vu usually means like something has been changed in the Matrix. And but imagine if just the Matrix was, a being itself, and just decided to change something in its that was going on in its own dream, basically. But its dream, the characters in its dream were actually sentient beings that it had created. That's kind of our context. So but if the sea splits, whatever that means, and it means multiple things. It means something physical, it means something spiritual, it means something metaphorical, it means something moral, it means scripture is true on multiple levels. But I think when people, in the past claim to have witnessed miracles that seem so beyond our comprehension, it's not necessarily outside the realm of possibility either. Just because we haven't seen anything like it doesn't mean it it can't happen. There's lots of things that can happen that you have never experienced in your life, and then but they have happened to someone, and someone has experienced it, just not you or me. But yeah, just think about that. Hello, Tyler. Yeah, Tyler means Tyler. Tyler bricklayer. Let's look. Proto-consciousness implies there's like a pre-consciousness structure, but it's also like it implies there's this in between of like it's not unconscious inanimate matter, but it's also just not conscious. It doesn't make sense. It's just kind of like a speculation of what if there is like this, like, what if there's a level of different levels of consciousness, and but and I do believe there's sentient singularity theory has levels of or I call it the periodicity of sentience. There's a periodicity to sentience, but it's not that there's an increase in sentience. It's just a change in an addition to additions in levels of awareness or in perspectives that can be understood and perceived, but it's not an increase in sentience. Like if a proton is a sentient being, it is as sentient as you and me. If a fish is a sentient being, it's as sentient as you and me, because there's not more sentient and less sentient. There's just sentient and not sentient, and that's it. And in sentient singularity theory, all things that are not sentient beings are constructs that emerge from the symmetry structures that are created in the interaction between a multiplicity of connected, interconnected, and nested beings. So even like, this water bottle, it's like, what is this water bottle? This water bottle is a bunch of protons and neutrons that are in relationships with each other, basically marriage structures and nuclear structure, just like a nuclear family. It's the same thing. Human marriage is this. It's just further along the periodicity of sentience, but it's the nuclear structure manifested, just like in the nucleus of an atom. Atoms are like little marriages, and a marriage is a lineage. It maneuvers. It is a being. Like, it's a being in and of itself. It says in the scripture, even the two shall become one flesh. What that means is, like, there's a oneness that's created that's not just you and I. We decided to stick together, and so we stick together. No, like, you've created a structure that actually maneuvers in the context of lineage now, which you can't actually do as an individual. And neither can protons and neutrons. But atoms, which are elements, do. And we used to call them species of atoms, which I actually like better. And we didn't say, like, gold is an element, a different element, and there's the periodic table of elements. It was the different species of atoms: carbon, hydrogen, helium, gold, silver, zinc, iron. These are different species of atoms that are that kind of evolve in different environmental pressures, and that's inside a star, and depending on the environment's pressure will determine the species of atom, which is the element. So as pressure is increased, and then starts with hydrogen, then go to helium, etc., 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 until it reaches iron and it explodes. And the pressure that's created in that environment is so great that it produces heavier elements than even iron. But they go on to form, chemical bonds into compounds and things like that are probably sentient beings as well. And some of them, at least, maybe not all molecules, but probably some compounds. And then they go on to form cells, and via specific metaphysical process that we'll never understand completely while we're embodied, at least. And we don't need to, but it's definitely requires actions behind the metaphysical curtain by God that to have what I call like an ascension event, which is when the periodicity moves forward, which is how do you get protons and neutrons from to to atoms basically, and then atoms to compounds or molecules to cells, single cellular organisms to multicellular organisms, basically. So how do those happen? Those are a different part of evolution that is not adaptation. It's not. Adaptation does not get you multicellular organisms, and it does not get you animals from bacteria. Adaptation will get you from this species of bacteria to that species of bacteria, or from even a fish to a frog, maybe even to a human, but it's not going to get you or to an ape, you could at least, but it's not going to get you to whatever comes next, where the thing that we are the cells of that comes next. That's not adaptation. That's not natural selection that does that. Natural selection requires the context of a lineage, maneuvering via structures that maneuver via lineage context. But atoms do that. They, it starts with carbon or with hydrogen, then it goes to helium, then it goes to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They each are, you can't build an element that's, that's further along in this process without also previously having elements existing that, have a lower proton count, basically. So there's a chain of adaptation going on. So, and there are generations happening, and the adaptation is happening over generations. That's the change is happening over generations versus the change is happening in a very different way, which is like, how do you get the first multicellular animal from a bunch of single cells? That's not something that you just that gets caused by natural selection due to environmental pressures. That's something else. And in sentient singularity theory, this happens 8 times, 7 or 8 times, depending on how you count it, which is Salonic periodicity, this right here. So you have, it starts here. These quarks are not sentient. They're like fingers of the cosmos, which is a sentient being, but this is not, but quarks are not sentient. But hadron is assumed to be sentient. Protons and neutrons are hadrons. And so you have 1 kind of, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5, and then 6, and then 7. And so, this is that you can count it kind of like that, but there's also, you can count it like this, these stages where you're counting both sides of the coin at the same time. You have like atoms and hadrons, then cells to kind of or hadron, this to this, and this and this and this and this are like simultaneously existing. And so you really have this to this 1, this to this 2, and this to this 3, and then it starts over. Because you're looking at the change from this to this. That's the event. It's not, you're not counting this and then this and then this and then this. You're counting this and then this and then this. So, and what's interesting is that you have this 1 and 2 and 3, but it's in the context of 4. It's like 4 changes and 3 changes and 4 perspectives, I have these models of change here. Where is it? This is the hardest. This is the hardest one to fit in my theory, and I know that this looks chaotic and schizophrenic or whatever people want to judge me as from just looking at this. But this is a workspace, okay? This is like a lot of this is just me messing around and exploring. But really, it's just these. Oh wait. Okay. And then we're gonna go like this. Okay, so it's these four. And what's interesting is that what this is this is a map of change. It's a map of information. And information, again, requires symmetry to be started in is fundamentally exists in a space of symmetry, because you're ultimately, if you're changing information, you are changing something from what it was to what it isn't anymore, and that's really all you can do. Everything else is kind of an emergent perspective of information change, all these additional like bits of information that we think of when we think of what's complex. And I hate the term complex, complexity theory. I study, when people say I study complexity, I'm just like, I just want to smack my head into the desk. Like, that's not how this works. I don't think you understand complexity. Complexity, that which is complex, is just like a perspective. It's just something that seems like overwhelming to you. It's, but, so the goal is to change all the reds to greens and all the greens to reds, or all the zeros to ones and all the ones to zeros. That's the goal. So this is the starting state. This is the ending state. How do you do that while maintaining information without deleting it? So that means that everything is kind of defined by its place in relation to everything else around it. So you can't just get rid of all of this and then just change it to this, because you can't be like, okay, I'm going to just do this, delete, and then I'm going to go over here, I'm going to look and see what it was, and now I'm just going to go 1 and 0, and this is a 0 over here, so I'm going to put a 1 over here, and this is a 1 over here, so I'm going to put a 0 over here. Look, I did it in one step. No, that's not true. What you really did is you never deleted this, so you're referencing this, and every time you input information here, you're being like, okay, I'm going to look over here and see that it's this. And so now I know that this is this, and I know that this one is here next to this one. And then I look over here and I see that this is 1, and it's also opposite of this one. So I'm going to put it as a 0. And then you do the same thing again and again. So you're always referencing back to this, and you're referencing the ones around it, at least, because you're referencing the starting state. The goal already. You already saw it here, and you are also using, every time you enter in a new one, you're using the others that you've already entered in around it to like help guide you in knowing what the next cell should be. So you're not actually able to just like do this all at once. You have to maintain the information as you make the changes, which means you can't delete anything. Okay, you change, you don't delete. So here, what I'm going to change is, and you can only change 1 bit at a time. I'm going to change 1. I know this is 1. I'm going to is 0, so I'm going to change it to a 1. And then I'm going to change this one to a 0, and then I'm going to, etc. Each step in this, is you are doing this again and again without ever losing context, because context is information. And if you go and you just are like, oh, actually, let's do this, delete. No, you just deleted the context. So you deleted the information. It looks like in some ways, but you actually didn't, because it's still right here. So you're cheating, and but you're not actually able to cheat, because you've changed the context to your just doing each of these steps in a single set of 4 cells, instead of just I'm showing each step, each action here, and each state. And so in a 2x2 matrix, it takes 5 states and 4 actions, which together adds up to 9. So there's 9 perspectives. That means the amount of information it takes to change this 4x4 grid completely, change all the information in this 4x4 grid, and maintain symmetry from an internal perspective. Like, you're not getting a God's eye view of this. Imagine you are inside of this set of 4 cells, and these are each rooms. You have to change you have to paint each room a different color, change the color of the paint on the walls of each room. So you're in this room and it's red, so you're going to change it to green. And then you're going to go into this room and it's going to be green, so you're going to change it to red. And then you're going to go into this room and you're going to see that it's red, and so you're going to change it to green. And then you're going to go into this room and you're going to see that it's green, so you're going to change it to red. And then that's what you're doing. You're like in a house, moving through the rooms, changing the color on the walls. And the goal is to change all the colors. If the walls are white, you got to paint them all black. There's only you can only change it to one color. It's not like, oh, I'm going to change this one to yellow, and this one, they're all white, but I'm going to change this one to yellow, and then I'm going to change this one to purple, and then I'm going to change it. No, there's no purple that exists. I'm using red and green because it's just showing differentiation. It's because I'm using color. What is it called? My gosh. Selective coloring, or whatever it is. I'm blanking right now because I'm actually really competent in Excel, but I'm blanking because I'm just, I don't know, having a brain fart. But conditional formatting, using conditional formatting, and that's why when I changed the colors, like it changed the number, it changes the color just to make it easy to see. So that adds up to like not an information amount, the amount of 9 that is kind of generated from an internal information change of 4 bits of information. Changing 4 bits of information from an internal perspective, which means 1 at a time, actually gives you 9 bits of information, because you have 5 states and 4 actions. You're aware of each action that you take, and you're aware of what those actions are, which means they're each an individual bit of information, and you're only aware of what actions to take because you're aware of the context of those actions, and the context of those actions are the state that precedes them. So like that is a bit of information as well. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. What's fascinating about this is that in sentient singularity theory, you start with the 4 primary perspectives, and then you get you start with 1 being some 1. Then you have the 4 primary perspectives, how they orient within multiplicity. And then that builds into this structure here, which is interestingly 3x3, which is 9. And you can look at the numbers that it gives, which is that it's spitting out in this symmetric calculation, basically, where you're generating. This is a kind of a matrix that shows the generation of information. I didn't start off building this as a 3x3 matrix. I started off just being like, you have 1 bit of information, and I just kind of went here and was like, okay, that's 1. Okay, so now what? Well, you can kind of like only get one from one, just have a different perspective of the one, kind of like thinking about yourself, and kind of just you can only get you can't have a two here, basically, is my point, because there's only one that you're generating from. So what the information that you're adding here comes from here. So it's basically what the equation is actually this. And you have to do it symmetrically because you're generating information in a symmetrical way as you're building. It's basically like a two-dimensional representation of like a kind of a like a Fibonacci sequence, but that's just here and here, and then the next one would be like this plus this, and then the next one is this, and the next one is this, and the next one is this, and the next one is this. And look, that's the Fibonacci sequence right there. 1 1 3 1 1 2 3 5 8 13. So but you're doing that in this symmetrical way, and you have to do the same thing to every single side, really, or you have to maintain symmetry as you do it. So there's multiple ways to actually set. There's not endless ways, but there's multiple ways, probably like 2 or 3 only, different ways to actually put some of the equations in. But what's interesting is you always end up with the same quantities, and just kind of like doing this. And just like the Fibonacci sequence, you're always adding the next one is always the sum of the previous two, but in this, you're maintaining symmetry, and then as I was doing this, I had equations here adding these numbers and multiplying these numbers here. So that's what these are. That's multiplication. This is addition. And here it's like a little odd because you're starting with 1. You kind of have to do it in a weird way in algebraically, but then it's expected after that first step. This just same thing. This times this times this. This is this plus this plus this. But you can kind of set this up too in a couple different ways, this equation, but you'll always get the same result. And then this is these. And I just had equations around this like process that I was doing, and where I was multiplying on this side and adding on here. And I realized when I got to a certain point that I got 33, which was just an odd number. And it happened when internally I had hit 4 in this structure. So the reason why Excel is so good and why it's actually such a good thing that I didn't have formal training in physics or anything like that, because it's not about physics. This is a metaphysics theory. Metaphysics is the context of physics, which metaphysics is the study of being and the context of that generates things, kind of the nature of being and the context that generates things, that produces the perspective of different things, not beings, but things. It's the study of mind. That's really what it is. It's the study of information, which is the study of mind. That's metaphysics. It is the context of physics, actually. It is inevitably the context of physics. That's not even up for debate. I'm not saying we can't debate it. I'm saying that you can't actually win that debate because it's that clear. And it must be assumed because all of our physics models are constructed by beings with a certain mental structure, and all of our perceptions in the physical world are in the context of and understood and observed in the context of certain mental structure. And when you ask yourself, what is the truest thing that I know, and the first questions really, you get that sentience that is fundamental. And if you look at the definitional the logic built into the definition of existence itself, you get to sentience again. Existence is by definition all that exists, which means it is one, and it is self-evidently an information system, which means it's a single, completely self-referential information system, which is inevitably going to be sentient, because what else would be sentient if it's not an information system that is entirely aware of itself? But initially, that's all there is to be aware of for God. So like it's God's existence. He doesn't choose to exist. He has to exist. And by God, I just mean exist, initial, all-encompassing, eternally self-aware, sentient existence. The someone that is existence itself. And but that there's that you just have to take all that into context of like, what is physics? It's like, let's back up. What is matter? It's like, that's actually a really good question, but like, first we have to recognize the inevitably, like, the definite context of all of this, which is you and me and the someone that we're within. And you can't see that someone usually, just like your cells can't see you, but they are part of they're within you still. That doesn't, just because they've never seen a human being doesn't mean humans don't exist. And just like us and marriage structures, even, we've never seen a marriage as from like a kind of objective God's eye view, because we are in it. And a proton has never seen an atom, really. Like, not, I mean, I guess it could see other atoms that it's not part of, marriages that it's not in, but what it's seeing is family. When protons and neutrons form together into a nucleus of an atom, that atom can then provides the context necessary to have generationality to it, which is the different elements, or the different species of atoms, as they used to call it. That's exactly marriage structure for humans too. But you're in it, you can't see your own marriage as a unit objectively. You could see it, maybe other people's, but even then, it's not, you can't really see it. You're seeing the individuals together, but like, what you see, kind of the best glimpse you can get of it is when you see the family of that is formed by someone's marriage. And that's like as close as you can get, because again, just like the level that we're at, it's like we're in it, we're on that level, so like you can't really see it very well, and definitely not for yourself. But part of the evidence that it is real, and this is something that married people that are truly married, like they, by truly married, I don't just mean like on a piece of paper. I mean like they are actually committed to their marriage. And you cannot be there. There's a shared feeling that you are aware of. The marriage feels, and you can't actually escape the feelings of the marriage. It's really weird. Like when I'm having a down day, like my wife, if my wife is upset and isn't around me, she's upstairs or in her office or somewhere, if she ends up getting sad, I usually can feel not great, and then I end up finding out that she's sad. But even beyond that, even more concrete and obvious than that is, if I'm having a bad day, she cannot have a good day. If she's having a bad day, I cannot have a good day. It doesn't matter what happened in my day. I cannot have a good day if my wife is having a bad day. It's legitimately impossible. It's different than like when we were dating. I remember when we were dating, um, she was driving on, and we were living in LA, and um, she was sitting um, at a exit to get off the highway, and there's near us, and there was a light and at the end of the exit, so everybody was just sitting on the exit, and this person driving on the highway wasn't paying attention, and just rear-ended her, and it knocked the bumper off her car, and she was fine, but she was so upset, and she was like, crying, and so angry, and so sad, and just emotionally overwhelmed. And she called me, and she was like having an awful time, and I felt bad, but I also was like having, you know, I just remember I was like, I don't know, I was watching a movie or a show with like my roommates, and like was having, just a nice hangout chill night with my with my friends, and I was like, this is not convenient. I obviously I was glad that she was, first thing was she's okay. If she wasn't okay, this would have been different, but she was fine, but her car had not like damage to how it worked, but cosmetic damage. It had cosmetic damage, and she came, and uh I was like, oh, do you want to come over for a minute? Like, and she was like, yeah. And I was, honestly, I'm just being honest. She might be watching this right now, but I was kind of just like, oh, this is a bummer to my night a little bit, but like I was having a good night, and it was like inconvenient, but I did care about her enough to invite her to come over, and like, just try and help her calm down. And she had told me that the bumper was hanging off her car, and that as she was driving, it was just going across the ground, and she didn't know what to do about it. And I was like, come over and I'll help you. And she came over, and I took out my Leatherman, which I always have on me, and you should get one too. This is what I always carry. It's called Leatherman Skeletal. I've saved the day so many times with this, guys. I've pulled wedding rings of old ladies out of the drain before, and uh did surgery on my wife's toe when she got a giant splinter in it. I mean, I can't even tell you how many times this has saved me. Um, and but this was one of them. And she came over, and I cut the bumper of her car off with this knife. And now you're like, I mean, it needed to be replaced completely, but now she could drive without it going across the ground, which just makes you feel awful, and it's not safe to the people behind you. But now when she drove, it just felt normal. It's just, you would not know that there was something wrong with the car until you got out and looked at the bumper, and that makes you feel better. And I did that, and then she left, and I continued having a good night. And like, she felt better after I helped her, but she still had a shitty night. Like, it wasn't like I made her night good by cutting the bumper off her car. I just made it like a little bit less like dramatic. And uh but once you get married, that's not possible anymore. If your wife is having a bad day, you're not gonna have a good day, and vice versa. And if I'm having a great day or a good day, it means that she's also having a good day, because if she was having a bad day, I wouldn't have a good day. And so there is this intrinsic oneness of feeling that is inescapable, emotional oneness that is not, you cannot escape it. And only married people realize this, because you can't understand it until you're married. You just think that it's the same if you like, you know, I don't know, maybe if you live together, it's a little bit similar, but um, it's still not the same, because you're just not committed to whatever happens next, and to sticking with them through whatever happens next, which you are when you're married. So you're committed to dealing with their emotional, with your partner's, your spouse's emotional state, and sharing in it. That oneness of feeling is what defines someone. You are you because you feel yourself, and that which is beyond the bounds of your feeling is beyond you. It's not part of you anymore. If it's outside of your physical body and you can't feel what it's separate from you. Yeah. This model though even lines up with like the very first questions. It's like how you know that this is how I know that this is true. I don't even want to say accurate. It's true. Is when you ask yourself, what is the first question? The answer is which is the first question, by the way, of all questions. What is the first question? And the answer is, what is the first question? So it answers itself with itself. So think about if a question is one bit of information, the answer is going to be here. And the answer, which is going to be the next step, which is what's interesting about that, is it's going to be the same. What is the first question? What is the first question? This is the same internal bit of information. And then you get to what is the truest thing that I know. And then you get to like, I am. And it's like, that's this right here. But now you're building information, and then you can go from there. Just like this Fibonacci sequence, it goes 1, 1, 2, 3, 5. But here it's 4. But it's interesting because like you need a model. This is why you wouldn't want physics training or math. You wouldn't want to be a mathematician to be able to do this, because you probably couldn't, because you need a medium to construct models that it contains more information, conveys more information than just a simple like algebraic equation. You need, which is just information change internally. You need something that shows information change internally, which is an algebraic equation, input output, and then you need that contained within a context that shows its relationship to other equations as well, and in a generative form that kind of like a branching of equations, I guess, that shows also the relationship between those branches. And this Excel can do that, actually, because there's in this cell, there's more information than just this equation. It's where this cell is in relationship with these two, and with this one, and with this one. So it's more information than just what's in it. Whereas an equation would just be this. You need the cells, and you need them arranged into a symmetry structure. But you get these numbers. It's interesting if you go and you add this number 42, very interesting number in so many reasons in the world, mathematically, metaphysically. If you add 33 to 9, which is the count of this structure. So if this information, 33 is the information that is generated by the actions and kind of internal information, I guess, the sum within this structure to the count of the structure itself. So basically what you're adding is like, if 33 is, it's 3 by 3, and it's the information that's generated from a 3 by 3 matrix. This is called an extra arithmetic symmetry in Sentient Singularity 3. It's not a meaningless coincidence. It's not possible in mathematics for those a mathematical context for meaningless coincidences to happen. But That doesn't mean every interpretation we have is true. It just means, or is correct. It just means everything has a reason for it. And nothing is random. And so, nothing is meaningless. And so, but when you have this number generated from all of these numbers, which is generated from these numbers, which is generated from this, all from here. See, whatever. Input 0, input 1. You actually have to start with 1. You can't it's interesting to look at what other numbers are generated here, but it's not relevant actually, because you can always only start from 1. But so if you add the information that's generated within a structure that is kind of a mirror of like a representation of the structure itself. So a 3x3 number represents a 3x3 structure, and you add that number to the count, which is 9 of that structure, you get 42, which is kind of like saying if this represents self-awareness, it's like 3 looking at itself in the mirror almost. It's like you add self-awareness to an awareness of the context of the creation of that self-awareness, you get 42. And so it's almost, and in reality, like the context of that is the truest context always of where sentience is generated is within another sentience, because so it's like this is awareness of self and this is awareness of self in the context of that self, which is really awareness of self plus God, awareness of God in a weird way. It's weird. And like I never looked that up. It's just you can see it when you actually start with 1 and you see the information that is generated. And these you could replace oneness without. It's like you're starting with one being. It's like God with no one else. Oneness without. Outside of inside, it's kind of like you're aware of that you could put something inside, but you are outside of that, and because there's nothing, it hasn't actually generated yet, and so oneness within singularity, and but you're just building. But like you can replace this with what is the first question, and the answer for this one would be this, and the answer for this one would be this, and then this one would be uh generated by this plus this. So awareness that this is the answer to this and that they're the same. So now we need something new that's generated by that, which is, what is the truest thing that I know? I've looked at these, I'm stuck, it's in a loop. Well, what is the truest thing that I know? That because I'm trying to add information. I am. And so what is it that I know? And it's that I am. It's like there's 2 bits of information there. The truest thing that I know is that I am. And then you can continue, which I haven't really gotten far enough in the question process to like get to what is the third question. I actually haven't figured that out. I haven't really asked it. Like, this is not something I made up. It's not possible. It's reasoning from first person first, not even just first principles first. It's like first person first principles and first person first. And this happens everywhere with numbers. It happens with questions. It happens with beings. And then we're somewhere in the middle of it all. Yeah, okay, let's go. Okay. Vox Day book probability 0 is really good dismantling evolution. That makes sense. Um, it's like probability. I say this is like I get what he's do why he would say that, and but I go way further back, and it's like what? How do you get from there being someone and only someone and nothing else and no things and no one else? How do you get another someone? How do you get something? But well, how do you get another someone? Choice. It's the only way. You are not, and I being here, every partition of sentience from God is an intentional choice by him. It has to be. There is no process that it's just that he doesn't have control over that's just happening to him. Now he's constrained in how he constructs. Like I don't think I think the number of periods in the periodicity of you know of life or of logos or the number of stages of sentience. There's no or the number of primary perspectives. It's like they're fixed. God didn't choose those, but he has to choose to make someone else every single time and can perpetuate this process that but so when people Einstein asked, does God have any um choice in the rules of the universe? I don't think so, actually. The laws of physics, he can change what happens in the world, just like um uh, you know uh, you can change something, I don't know, in the matrix, but like you can't change the laws of logic that kind of are the foundation of how you code and what you can code into a world. And and given the laws and rules that are set up by the the perspectives that are generated by depending on the actions of the player is going to be inevitable. Like it's no choice in that, because logic is logic, and it all comes from God's oneness. Like he has constraints. He cannot make anyone outside of himself. He cannot end his own existence. These are rules that God, these are constraints of God, probably. Uh, and and he has to choose to make others, like consciously every time, because it's against his nature. His nature is oneness, because he is by definition existence itself, fundamentally, initially, eternally, all-encompassing existence, capital E existence. That is inclusive of all that exists definitionally, which means the logic, which means like the nature of him is oneness, which is why he's someone, and that's also why we are someone. There would be no one and nothing else, and there would also be nothing, because things come from beings in sentient singularity theory. So, but that's not possible. Even there's no way for there to be nothing or no one. There's a way to be nothing, which is just prior to God creating multiplicity. There's just him. There's someone. No one else, just someone. Nothing existed. A thing, by thing I mean like an object. That because you need multiplicity of beings to create the context of the perspective of a symmetry structure that is not someone, like a water bottle. Or a Leatherman. There's no proto consciousness in this Leatherman. There's no consciousness in this Leatherman. It's not conscious to some degree, but not to the level of us, like panpsychists would kind of say, but they don't have any way of backing that up, and it doesn't intuitively make sense either. Nobody is like actually truly feels like their fork is sentient being. And you just don't. But I don't believe anybody that says that they do feel that. It like if I were to like dissect the logic that they had behind that, I bet you I would dismantle it completely. Um, it just doesn't make sense with. It just doesn't make sense. But you know, people will say. Once when I was in that physics and math Discord where they basically, you know, I started. People were just freaking out about my work. They were not happy about it. Is just a bunch of math and physics PhDs. And they were like, this guy screamed at me once. I'll never forget it. He's like, um, uh, nobody thinks a hadron is a sentient being. And I was like, I think a hadron is a sentient being. And he's like, they wouldn't be able to, if that were the case, they wouldn't be, you wouldn't be able to predict anything, because they'd be able to make choices. He was like, they don't make choices. And I was like, they do make choices. And he was like, they don't. You wouldn't be able to predict anything. And I was like, well, you can make choices, but you're still predictable. And he didn't really have a response to that, but it's true, you know? And the thing is like, given enough information that is relevant, all the relevant information about a specific choice that you have before you, if everybody had all the relevant information, and meaning like everybody understood, truly understood, not just like was told, but truly understood, meaning could feel the consequences and understood how the consequences are going to feel to themselves and to others of every choice that was placed before them, almost all of us would probably make the same choices. Our choices would become super predictable, almost 100% predictable. And then somebody would be watching us, you know, from a God's eye view and being like, they're not sentient beings. They're too predictable. But it's like, no, they just know enough about what they need to know what choice they need to make. You know, when you are hungry, you eat. It's predictable. And yeah, you could choose not to, but why would you do that? You know, people don't normally do that. And so yeah, I mean I work with animals like in all my life, in the wild, in captivity, all different species, from fish to snakes to lizards to birds to dogs to bugs. Animals are extremely predictable until they're not. But for the most part, if you understand them very well, super predictable. And it's the issue when things get unpredictable is usually when there's like something that happens that we couldn't predict, but actually if we didn't see coming, but like if we did see it coming, then we would actually have probably been able to predict what would have happened. But that doesn't mean they don't make choices. It just means, you know, we're very predictable. Like, my wife called me today and I didn't pick up, and she was out running errands, and I missed her call. And then I called her back like 10 minutes later, and she was like, "Were you in the shower?" And I was like, "Yeah." And it's like, why would she know that? Because maybe the timing that it was happening was like a time that I normally take a shower, and I am somebody who almost always has their phone on them, and to the point of like I should have it on me less. And she knows that. And like if I don't answer the phone, it's because I'm like in the shower. I'm somewhere where I can't take my phone. That's what that means. And if I'm home, the only place that is like the shower. So it's, you know, predictable. Yeah. That doesn't mean you're not making a choice just because you're predictable. Like people who say it does. Oh, if people could make choices, if you know, in the context of choices, you wouldn't be there. People wouldn't be predictable, or things wouldn't be predictable. That's so not true. Like at all. It's if you have enough information about what is relevant to the person who's going to be making the choices, and they have enough information to understand the consequences of each of, the options before them, um, you're going to know exactly what they're going to pick. And even in moments of like, in a lot of the things that we do, these choices that we make are not actually like true choices. True choices are very rare actually in our lives. They are, you know, when you pick how you want to drive home from work, it's like this one's faster, this one's not faster, but it's like a prettier drive. You're not actually making choices in a real sense. Like when you pick what you want on a menu at a restaurant, you're not actually making choices. Not usually. You're just following instincts and logical constraints and within the context of the goals that you have. But a true choice is almost always a moral choice because it involves kind of going against your instincts uh, and it's not immediately logical, and it doesn't seem immediately logical. It is if you understand enough, if you have a God's eye view, enough of a God's eye view of things, like meaning you're aware of enough of the relevant information, or if you could see all the relevant information, you would choose the right moral choice. But like usually we don't have that, or a lot of times we don't. A lot of times we don't need it. You order something on the menu at a restaurant, and you don't have like moral restrictions on diet like some people do, um, that's a choice. I mean, I don't eat cheeseburgers anymore. It's one of my favorite foods. I don't eat shellfish anymore. It's one of my favorite foods. I don't eat pork anymore. It's one of my favorite foods. I mean, my body at 10 years old was probably made of half of my body was probably made up of ham and cheese hot pockets, and um, uh, so I gave up like all my favorite foods except milkshakes. I'm like a connoisseur of milkshakes, and um, but everything else I basically gave up. And when I became a theist, over time I like added more and more because I just started to see the logic in some of it, and some of it I just felt like when I became a theist, I never craved pork again. Sometimes I did crave shellfish, and sometimes I crave cheeseburgers even still, but I don't eat them. Um, and not that I think it's you're bad if you do, but I just think it's good for me if I don't, because of how I view it now. But I don't like kick myself for doing it prior because I didn't have the same information. But like that's a choice. Um, your choice is about your goals more than it is about like your individual choices every single day. It's about like what is you choose your goals. Um, and then sometimes you have a choice where you have to choose between your immediate wants and what is immediately pragmatic and what is immediately logical and what is ultimately good. And those are moments of choice, and they're rare. They're rare. Um, they're not something that you make throughout the day again and again and again. There's something you make, you know, rarely, and they're usually like kind of pivotal moments in your life, even if you don't realize it. Um, True choices. A true choice would also be a change in goals, or choosing your goals. But, yeah, I'm gonna continue with this, and then I'm gonna go to let's go to the chat. I love this. Makes complete sense and so beautiful to see. So like it's like I'm going to do it first here, and I hope it sticks, and then I will become the newest past. I don't know what you mean. Sorry to hear about what happened with trying to make your family. My heart goes out to you and your wife. Well, thank you. You know, everybody has their challenges. Um, but it's, I'm grateful for my wife in those situations. Um, I'm rusty, but it seems like he has a problem with taking himself out of his own logic. Not good for stereotypes. I like you, dude, but not good for the stereotypes. We are having a hard time already. What stereotypes? Again, a Jew telling God how his creation works. No, I'm not. I'm not telling God how his creation works. I'm saying that God, due to his own limits of being one, sets up logical constraints. You know that existence works a certain way usually. I also believe God can make the choice to change something in the moment. I believe God could change the sky to purple tomorrow, but he has to consciously go in and change it because it's not what it will be the inevitable result of the process that he has kicked off. That's what I'm saying. But I'm not saying he can't go in and change the sky to purple or make the stars disappear completely or part the sea. He can do any of those things, I believe, but he has to go in and do those things. That's what I'm saying a miracle is. It's a conscious action by God to change the logic that is in place within existence already, or within the cosmos and already. And but he has to go in and do it. That's a miracle. A miracle is something that is out. It's not what would have been expected in a normal in the normal turn of events, like the sky, I don't know, like if the sea parts in half, that's not something that would just happen because of the physics of that comes out of the logic of that comes from God's own, constraints. It requires God going in and being like breaking the logic for a minute. It's like a cheat code in a game or something like that. You have to go in, but it's like if you could go into the game and code something in that wasn't there already. That's like God can do any of that, but he has to do it. It takes a conscious choice. So, yeah, do I follow certain stereotypes of Jewish people? Sure, definitely. I'm not going to deny that at all. But also don't fit a lot of the stereotypes at all either. But I also do fit many of the stereotypes, and you fit all the stereotypes of whoever you are as well. Whatever group you come from, you fit many of those stereotypes. I don't even need to know you to know that. It's just a way of the world. But I'm not telling God how his creation works. I'm looking at how his creation works. And I'm also saying he can go in and do pretty much whenever he wants if he's going to consciously go do it. But he has to consciously go do it. So when I say, oh, you wouldn't exist if God didn't choose to make you, he had to choose to make you. And if anybody's like, well, you're just telling me what, you think you know better than God? It's like, no, but I know God is someone, and and he is existence itself, and that means that his nature by definition is oneness, because just like you are someone. Like if God isn't someone, then God doesn't exist. He is someone. He's not just something. People are like, God is beauty. No. God is beautiful, and beauty is like a guide for us towards God, but like God is someone. God is love. God chooses to love us. And that does make him, yes, in a way you could say love, but like I would say God is loving. He is loving, but he doesn't have to be. He doesn't have to be. He could make us and just purposely torture us just for his own amusement. I don't think he does that, but he could. And then just delete us out of existence so that it was just meaningless other than his own sadistic, like, entertainment. I don't think that he is like that at all. He's too wise for that, because he's aware of everything. You can't be aware of, and not just of everything, of everyone. And like, you can't be aware of everyone and their feelings and really be that much of a sadistic prick. Like, um, you know, somebody somebody said, I've had a number of people who mainly like are angry with Jews and don't seem to like Jews very much were sending me some messages today on Instagram because of a comment that I left that had nothing to do with Jews. And but my last name is it makes everything this unavoidable. And sent me some awful messages, and it happens sometimes. And it doesn't like bother me much, but I just was sitting there thinking like, you would never do this if you knew that if you really felt that I was someone just like you would never do that. And that's why we do this on the internet, much more so than person. We're so much crueler online, especially in the textual context, than we are when we're actually staring at somebody face to face, even on a Zoom call or something like that. We're so much kinder on a Zoom call. We're kinder on the phone than we are in text. We're kinder in a Zoom call than we are on the phone, and we're kinder in person than we are on a Zoom call. And because you're closer and closer to seeing the someoneness of the person before you, and you can't actually see it because you actually feel the awareness of someoneness is actually to feel it, and only someone can feel their own someoneness, and God can. He feels all our feelings. He knows how we feel all the time, because he feels it. Yeah, like there are rules to logic. That's all I'm saying. God can also go in and just part the sea, but that's not a normal string of events. That's why it's called a miracle, is because it takes his conscious choice to come in and do something unexpected. If I roll a ball down a hill, if there's a hill, or and I roll a ball down the hill, it's gonna roll down the hill, and that's expected. But I could also go and stop the ball and push it back up the hill. But I have to go and stop the ball and push back up the hill. Like, otherwise, it's just going to keep rolling down the hill. There are rules, and there are constraints, and there are choices. And that's because determinism and choice, which is really will, are not mutually exclusive or conflicting concepts. They're actually dependent concepts. You can't make a choice if you're not aware of what the consequences of that choice are. If you're before a fork in the road and you want to go to the mountains and you have no idea where that road goes, and you have no idea where that road goes, and you don't know which one leads you to the mountains, and you don't even know you can't even see the mountains. You can't see a beach, you can't see mountains, it's just flat. But in one direction there's a ocean, and one direction somewhere there are mountains, but you are stuck in Nebraska and you can't see either one. You can't actually make a choice which path to go down. You could choose to make a choice to flip a coin, but you can't choose to actually which path to go down if the path that you're going down is to try and get to the mountains or the sea. But as soon as you know that going down that path is going to lead you there to the mountains, then now you can make a choice. And so because there's determinism involved, so they require each other. They're dependent concepts, and there are things God has to choose to do, and for them to happen, and there are things that happen because of God's previous choices, not because of his current choice. And they're just consequences of his previous choices and of our choices. But I'm not saying anything that isn't experienced and known to be true to everyone's experience. and also logically seemingly inevitable. There are things about like God that I can't know and you can't know, and but like there's no point in even thinking about it and discussing it, because it's so, if the whatever that is that exists, if it's there, I don't even want to say there are things that we don't and can't know about, like how, you know, um about God's, abilities. We can't know. There, I will say there are definitely things we don't know. I don't know if we can't know them or not. But like I will not say that I can't be aware of everyone, and God is definitely aware of everyone. And he can do things that we would think would never happen, because we're thinking about it in terms of what we can do about our current context. But he's able to manipulate everything at once, and everyone in the context in the world, and line everything up, because he has just a perspective of everyone that we just don't. But so we can't know everything that God knows, but like, or we don't know everything that God knows, and we don't know everything God can do, but I don't even want to say we can't, because that's not necessarily like, you can't know everything, but there might be, no one can know everything but God, but there might be possible to know like pretty much a lot more than most people think. I mean, I definitely think that's true. But that it said, like, you do that mainly by knowing God as someone, like, and but also, like, one thing that I know is that God is someone who has his own will and can make his own choices. So I don't try and project my own like desires onto God. Like, God can choose to change something, even if he's, I don't know, if he started some process for somebody, he can choose to change it. I mean, he is a sovereign being, and that's something that I know about God, and that, like, but if I say that and people are like, oh, of course, you're going to tell us how God works. It's like, I'm not going to tell you like what he's going to do next, but I'm going to tell you that that he's someone, and that he's sovereign, and that he has the ability to make choices. He doesn't have to love us, but he chooses to. And because he's too wise to not. I mean, like, and if I say that, why is that a problem? Maybe it's true, we should try and know God. That doesn't mean we can control God, and that doesn't mean I'm trying to tell people what is, what God's next move is going to be. I don't know. No, I don't even know what his next move is going to be in my life. There was something recently that it was I won't talk about it right now, because it's private, but I'll talk about it when things are more like, it's just like something my wife and I were going through, and I'll talk more about it later. But it's just a goal that we're working on, a project that we're working on, and like we thought we had seen, oh man, like this just seems like so perfect, like this, how could this, all these coincidences were lining up, and things that seemed just too good to be true, almost, or not even too good to be true, just perfect. I don't want to say too good to be true, but just perfectly aligned, like God had set it up for us to succeed at this project that we have. And then right at the very last second, it all fell apart, and my wife and I were like, what? Why would God show us that, and then just and make it seem like this was just so perfect, and that it was we're gonna succeed at this, and then just take it away? Like, what's the point? And then the next day we found out something about the project that made it was such a great thing that it fell apart, that we could not have foreseen. that it was God was actually like protecting us, and we were really like annoyed that he had basically like felt like it felt like he had dangled something in front of us that we were trying to accomplish, and then was like, nope, just threw it away just to, it just didn't seem to make sense. And then it turned out like we found out something the next day about it, and we were so glad that that it had fallen apart, that God had taken this away from us, because we would have made a choice that then we would have regretted. And that's God. And like, you can't know what everything God knows. You just can't. That I will absolutely say. You can't know everything God knows, but you can know a lot more about God than he's mysterious. You know, he is beyond you, but he's also very accessible, and uh, and that isn't a contradiction. You know, I'm constantly reminded and humbled by God every day. I'll tell you exactly what it is when I can speak more about it, when things are more finalized. And but it's just a private project that we have right now, and I'll talk more about it. And it's not going to be anything revelatory, but it's not a secret either. And it's it's not a normal thing. But it's just something we're trying to accomplish, and we thought we were right about to accomplish it, and it just kind of, we didn't think we'd be able to accomplish it for a very long time, and then all of a sudden everything's just lined up out of nowhere, and we were like, wow, this is from God. God wants us to accomplish this, and then right at the last second it was taken away from us, and we were like, what the hell? And then we found out something the next day, and we were like, wow, actually, I'm really glad God took that away from us, because we would have regretted the choices that we were right about to make. Because God has information we didn't have, but like now we do have that information, and I'm not saying there isn't even more information we don't know. I'm sure there is, uh, but there was certainly information that was highly relevant to the project that we had, that had come into our awareness the day after we had, this project that we were trying to accomplish had fallen apart. That made us very, very happy that it had fallen apart. And it's interesting. I used to work for Dennis Prager, and Dennis Prager wrote multiple books on happiness, and he said happiness is a moral obligation. And in the Bible, it says joy. You're supposed to be joyful, and you are supposed to be joyful. You're like commanded to be joyful, not to be happy, to be joyful. It's different. It's one of them is a choice, and that's really what I think Dennis means by like happiness is a moral obligation, is to take joy in your life, to go through life with joy, not with despair. Despair is a sin. It is a sin. It's against the most commonly repeated statement in scriptures, which is do not worry. And despair is beyond worrying. It's like you've given up on worrying, but you're still worrying. It's and but Dennis, not, I don't agree with anyone on everything, but I agree with everyone on something. I have it written down in the description of every video. But I worked for Dennis, and Dennis is very wise in many ways. Not in all ways, because nobody is in all ways except God, but in many ways. And I've learned a lot from him. And I used to photograph I was his photographer for his wedding, for his birthday every year, as well as just working for PragerU. And he wrote these books, and then last year or the year before, I think it was last year, maybe it was 2024. He got out of the shower and slipped and fell and hit his spine, and he's now a quadriplegic. He cannot move his arms or his legs, and and he I started watching an interview of him. It's the first real interview that I've seen of him since, and I haven't spoken to him since this happened because I moved away, and I've spoken. I'm friends with his son still, and spoken to him about it. Um, but he was saying that he didn't realize how good those books were that he had written until now, that he had written 20 years earlier, and he was like, I had no idea that I was in like pursuing that and kind of really outlining that idea and promoting that idea that joy is kind of a moral obligation that we have because we're given this gift, and like you should never be of being this gift of being by God, but we were all a choice. That, I'm telling you, is a fact. Every mosquito was chosen by God to exist, and that is tough for me to reconcile because I hate him. But like that goes for us too, obviously. And you're not a byproduct of the natural process that God goes through, and he didn't choose us. It's just he chose every partition of will that he made, um, which is someone that he created with, and because he had to. It is a constraint of his multiplicity of sentience. The creation of multiplicity of sentience within his oneness requires him to choose to take an action against his own kind of intrinsic nature. I don't even want to say that. It requires him to take an act, to make a choice and take an action. It's not just like the natural process. And but Dennis wrote this, and in this interview, these books, and in this interview, he was like, I didn't realize that I was preparing myself for this in my life, and now I see it. And he's like, it makes me so happy. And I was like, wow, dude, like I've never seen somebody still have so much joy after being paralyzed. And it's like you've become trapped. You haven't been even. You're not even in get. You're not even in heaven. Like you have to now just be trapped here still, and all these things that you enjoy before, like you don't get to do them anymore, but you're still here, and he still was taking so much joy in it, and I was like, wow, dang, like God, only God is able to align things like that over lifetimes, not over the course of decades, and not just decades, but multiple lifetimes, multiple generations. He can align things. He can reconcile things for our great grandkids that we think we screwed up forever, for all of our subsequent generations or whatever, and he can reconcile it. So God is the most powerful being that there is, and anything that can be done, he can do. And we cannot know everything that can be done. That I will say. I am in awe of God constantly in my own life. Like the things about my life, some things about my life, and you never know what's to come. You can step out of the shower and slip and fall and be paralyzed. Dennis is very tall too, and big in every way. Like he's like 6'4" and also not thin. And big man like fall very hard. Uh, and I felt awful about it. But then I saw him in this and I was like, wow, like what a message. You know, I don't know. It was beautiful. Saw beauty in this moment, in this like instance of tragedy to a man that I like, you know, has meant a lot to me in my life. And I know how much Dennis loves life. Like Dennis loves life. He loves everything about life. And he loves his wife. He loves food. He loves like God. He loves working. He loves writing. He loves traveling. He loves meeting people. I mean, he is so full of life. And then to see this happen to him, I was so like, gosh, what a tragedy. But then it's actually like it couldn't have happened. It couldn't have been more like there's no one it would have been better to have happened to that I know of, at least. And he said that. Even I was like, that's a beauty that only God could foresee. um yeah, I mean, I'm not here to tell you like that I am the master of the universe. I'm not. um My goal with sentient singularity theory is for you and everyone else who wants to truly understand it to understand how their own mind works, so that they can know how to think and understand how to navigate their lives better, how to recognize instances of choice, recognize instances where your mind is tricking you when you're like, I want to work out, but I just can't do it. Why don't I ever work out? But I want to get in better shape. And it's like, no, I want to work out, which is different than wanting to work out. It's like, now you understand that's different. You can like realize your mind is in a mental trap, like things like that. And then I want us to understand the value of the other beings around us, and what makes someone someone. And I want people to understand that we are inside of someone who is the capital S someone, that existence itself is a single being, a single someone that chose to make each and every one of us. What does that mean for how you treat other people? Even mosquitoes and spiders and things in your house. I'm not saying don't swat a mosquito if it's like, you know, sucking your blood or something like that. But honestly, like, I don't know, makes me think about it sometimes more. And I think you should think about it. I'm not saying don't, you know. Um, but I've definitely like saved a lot more spiders than I used to kill. And after this, and I've always liked animals, but now even the ones that I'm like, nah, I didn't really care for too much, even if I thought they were interesting, I'm like, that's someone, you know. I don't know. That's what we should be thinking about. But God too, you know. We should be thinking about, what is God? Why did God make us? What implications does that have for what we should do in our lives? What goals should we pursue? What behaviors should we avoid? What, you know? And that's, you know, somebody shared something on an ad. Every time somebody shares an ad, um, that's like, I don't know. I don't like when people use sex in ads. And I work in advertising, and I'm actually guilty of doing this before for a short period of time, and then I actually had a father wrote in and was to our company and was like, listen, like I have sons, and like I saw that like you're just, you know, using pretty women in your ads. And we weren't like, she wasn't being um pornographic. I mean, what does that mean? But like it was clearly like, you know, picking attractive people. And but they were clothed and everything. It wasn't like they weren't. But still. And uh, and he wrote in, he was like, I have sons, and like this is manipulative. And uh, I we all looked at everybody I worked with, we all looked at each other and we were like, he's right. We never did it again, ever. And now when I see people do like push ads, like I like shooting and stuff like that. And I mean, I like martial arts, but I like shooting, and I like the technology of weapons, swords and guns and things like that. And a lot of firearms companies, I've worked in firearms industry and for a little while, and a lot of firearms companies will like push an ad with like a girl in like her underwear with holding a gun or something like that. And I always have, I'll be like, this is inappropriate or something, and it's everybody jumps on me every single time in the comments, and they're like, oh, don't, words that I'm not going to repeat here, basically like, calling me gay and all kinds of things, and I don't know, rude, all kinds of just things that are just not true. And what I've realized is that the way that you actually get people to realize that they're wrong on this is not by being like, you can't appeal to the Bible, can't like, none of that will probably work if they're already okay with it. But what you do, and this is what I've done, and every single time it stops the conversation. That doesn't mean they admit they're wrong. It means they block me and they delete the post sometimes. And I say, would you share that picture if that was your daughter in that picture? And they would never say yes. And I've had one person say yes who's not a dad, who doesn't have children. And he was like, well, I mean, if it was her career to be a model, like, would you want your daughter walk down the street in her underwear? No. So why is it okay for her to get pictures taken of her and then posted everywhere, like in her underwear? It just doesn't make sense. And you just don't realize it until like you're placed in the situation and you see the someoneness of someone, and you're like, well, what if it was your daughter? Would you do that? And especially if they have a daughter, nobody says yes. And it's because it gets them to think about their someoneness, the someoneness of the person there. And because I've placed in their mind someone that they know as someone, not something, someone. And it's funny because this is exactly what lines up with what is in has been stated by the the prophets and sages of the ages. Jesus, being the most prominent one, said, do unto others that which you would want done unto your own. And then there's rabbis recorded in the Talmud even as saying, that which is hateful to you, do not do to others. It's not the same statement, actually, even though it seems like it'd just be the mirror inverse. It's not, but it's in the same line, but it's actually Jesus' statement is better, because Jesus' statement is about what you should do for people, not about what you shouldn't. And both of those can have their place and importance, but if all you did is what you should do, that's more important than never doing what you shouldn't. We're here to take actions, not to not take actions. Yes, you're supposed to avoid sin, but like more than that, you're supposed to do mitzvahs, supposed to do good deeds. So that's why Jesus' statement is better. It's why I say don't subscribe to an anti-ideology. Like, it's better to be if you're going to say, I believe in liberty, meaning like I'm a libertarian or something, those people behave very differently than people who say I'm an anti-fascist. But even though they seem like similar statements, one of them is constructive and one of them can only be destructive. And now, like, don't do to others that which is hateful to you, like don't do to others, isn't even constructive. It's just refraining, because it's not even destructive. It's not constructive and it's not destructive. It is so it's not really an anti-ideology to in it completely. It's refraining, but an anti-ideology, if it's totally adopted, ends up being destructive to you. So when people, it's interesting, like way of putting this is like purity culture in like in some theistic communities, religious communities. My wife and I watched this show, and it's about people trying to get married, and this girl was like a virgin, and in the show, like you actually, I forgot what it's called, but it's actually people who are really trying to get married, and actually, it's not The Bachelor or anything. It's like it was Married at First Sight, um, or um, something like that. I'm actually fascinated by those shows. My wife likes them. The ones where people are actually trying to find a spouse. Those are the only like reality shows that I kind of like, because it's interesting, and it's actually something we should be trying to do. But this girl, she was so attached to this idea of like the whole time she was just talking about like how she's virgin and purity culture and everything, to that she couldn't like let go of it at the end when like she was going to marry this man that she'd been set up with, and to be a good match, and like dated, and if you get married, like you're supposed to not you're supposed to have sex with your spouse, like, and being like she had turned her ideology into an anti-sex ideology, and it destroyed the marriage that was actually like otherwise a really good fit. And I was like, you should be like pro, sex in marriage, and that's not like not anti-sex, basically. Like it just had become an anti-ideology, just like anti-fascism is an anti-ideology. People who call themselves anti-fascists, they just destroy things all the time. People who call themselves anti-racist, they just a lot of times destroy things, and they end up behaving as fascists and as racists, because you can only focus on that which is top of mind. And so that is what it means to focus. So if your focus is on racism all the time, you're going to be like judging people based on their race. And even if your focus is on being anti-racist, if your focus is on being anti-fascist all the time, you're going to end up being like tyrannical. And I don't know. You'd want to be pro like something. You want to believe in taking in something constructive, not your focus should be constructive. That's what I'll say. You want to believe in God, and but and in his goodness. I don't even believe in God. I know God exists. Like I am my personal experiences combined with logic. I am the only thing that I know more truly than God exists is that I exist. And I am about as sure, I am as confident that God exists as I am even that I exist. I think that they're kind of like, I don't know, like I'm pretty much as confident. Uh, for kind of a bit different reasons, because I'm not God. So, but I have a first person view of myself, but I don't have that of God. But I have personal experiences that I can't deny, and I've logicked this out enough to know where it always leads. It's to that there's someone that is existence itself, but I have to have faith in God's assistance. Like that's my faith. That's when what people say, like, you have to maintain your faith. It's like I don't have faith in God's existence. I know God exists. You might not, that might not be true for you, but it is true for me. But what I do have to have faith in is God's assistance constantly. My wife and I are constantly like, what are we going to do? I don't know, but we have to just trust God, because we don't know. That is what faith is. Is not people who are theists who are anti-theists, actually not atheists. Atheism doesn't exist, but anti-theists, but who call themselves atheists, which used to be me. They are the ones that have actually come up with kind of the definition that of faith, meaning that belief that God exists. That's not what it ever meant to people who are theists. Why would it mean that to people who are theists? People who believe that God exists already, think that God exists, know that God exists. Like they don't have to have faith in it. They're convinced. But they have to have faith in it as God's assistance and his love for us, and that he will help us work things out that we can't imagine figuring out on our own. But anti-theists or atheists, self-described atheists, they can't even get to that point where they're like, no, their faith for them means that they have to maintain constantly, faith that God loves them, and will be there. But because they're still stuck at like, does God exist or not? You have to first get to God exists. Then you can go to, does God, is he good? Does he love us? Is he going to help us? Or care for us? But if you're not even convinced that he exists, then you're not thinking of whether or not he loves us. You can't. You legitimately, logically can't. Not honestly. You have to assume that he does exist prior to even questioning whether or not what his intentions are with us. So I am somebody who operates on faith in that way in God just as much as anyone, even though I am so aware of God's existence from so many angles. It probably in just a more, I don't know, like finalized degree than most people who would call themselves religious, I would say, just because I'm so obsessed with it. I can't even help it. And also I've had experiences that were not my choice. They were God's choice. So I can't take credit for that either. But I still, even then, I'm like, why would he place this opportunity before me and make it so perfect, and then just to take it away? And like, does he even love us? I still have that. So I'm happy for your success so far, Tyler. Thank you. I don't know what success you're talking about, but I'm grateful for all the blessings in my life. And I know I should be more grateful. In Judaism, there's a prayer that you say on Yom Kippur that goes something like I am sorry for my sins, and I'm sorry for not being more sorry. And I've kind of like flipped it in my own mind lately and been like, I am grateful for all the blessings in my life, especially when I realize that I'm like focusing on things that I don't have too much, and it just kind of makes you puts you in a bad place. And then I have to take a step back and look at like all these things that I never expected I would have at this point, but that God has blessed me with. And it might not be what I'm focused on achieving right now, but that's because I already have it. And I've been like trying to be like, I'm grateful for all the blessings that I have. And I also know that I should be more grateful than I even am. Because you can only focus on one thing at once. Like you can't view all your blessings at once, and be aware of them, and internalize them all at once. You just can't. But you gotta like back up sometimes and see that there's more. Every night my daughter, I've been trying to like instill like when you have a kid, you're like, how am I gonna raise my kid to have a relationship with God? Like, what should that be? And gratitude, this is another thing I learned from Dennis Prager, is the most important emotion to feel when it comes to your relationship with God, because and recognize, because it is the most truly and completely aware state that you can be in terms of your relationship with God, is that he has given you everything that you have that is good, and that you are here for a reason, and you have meaning intrinsically because you're here, and he made you for a reason, which means that you matter. And there that you want to be grateful, and like some of the most connected I've ever felt to God was when I was literally like unemployed and no money in my bank account, and I was surviving on Costco hot dogs and like cans of beans. I remember I was sitting on my bed in this like slum that I was renting in LA. That when I say slum, I mean it. Like when I moved in, there was like rat. I can't even tell you. It's disgusting. But this person had pet rats, and that they had let run free the previous like tenant, and in this room that I was renting in this house, and they had destroyed it and also shredded everything, and like shredded things that you should have thrown away that I found, and like it was disgusting. I had to put so much effort in, and I to get this place decent, and I like found paint in the garage and like painted over, crazy weird paintings that they had painted on the walls. It was not great, but I made it into something great, and for me at the time. And I remember I was like sitting there though, and I couldn't, like, I didn't know where my rent was going to come from next, and I was basically an assistant wedding photographer to make ends meet at the time, because I had been laid off from a job that I had and that I had moved out to Los Angeles for. And then I remember I was sitting and eating a can of beans, and I was like, I'm so grateful that I'm sitting on a bed with a frame. And this bed is, I'm the only person who has slept in this bed, because when I first moved in there, I couldn't even afford a mattress or a bed of my own. And there was just mattress on the floor that was so gross I didn't even want to touch it, and I put like a plastic sheet over it, and like another plastic sheet, and like three other sheets, that, and then I didn't even look at it. And then as soon as I could afford a bed, because a friend of mine, by a miracle of God, they had accidentally delivered two mattresses to his house, and so he had a spare one, and he didn't need this broken frame that he had, but I fixed it, and he gave it to me, and I bought the mattress from him for $100. And after I had this, and I was sitting on that bed, and I was like eating this can of beans, and I was like, I'm so grateful to you, God, for the food that just me being able to eat, like good food, actually, like healthier than you probably usually eat when you have a lot of money. And uh and then that I had this bed that nobody else had slept on. And it was it was one of the most it was probably like the first moment that I had one of the first moments where I just felt so emotionally connected to God. I'd already like logically realized he existed, but it was one of the first moments I had really felt emotionally connected. And so my daughter and I and my wife pray every night, and I worked on like what is a good prayer for me, for like the Goldstein family prayer every night, putting my kids to sleep. And uh because it's not like what Sunday school you send them to, or you know uh and all these things. Like I went to Hebrew school and Sunday school and all this stuff, and I didn't believe in God because nobody prayed in my house, nobody talked about God. um it starts with like expressing gratitude to God in your daily life for real things in your house. And like I want my kids to know God and understand God and understand their relationship with God. And like the beginning of that is like, what do we say to God every day? And it's prayer, and it's it should be a prayer of gratitude. And so we say is I came up with 8 things that we pray to God for, and my daughter adds in a bunch of other ones. Uh, and I say we thank God for grace, for guidance, for health, for wealth, for family, for friends, and for protection and for peace. And um, and my daughter knows the prayer now, and she says it every time, and she understands it, and she adds things that she loves. And I'm gonna share. I'll show like actually a video here, um, because this is just too cute, and then I'm gonna go. Probably way too late. It is. It's way too late. I said to my wife, I was like, "This is gonna be a short stream. Don't worry." Of course not. Uh, Here, this is my daughter. She's like adding in French fries and mac and cheese and like chicken nuggets. Oh man, it's just it's cute. Here, I'm gonna TNG. Okay, here, I will show it to you, and then I'll address the chat, and then we'll go. Here. Right here. Let me just make sure it's the right video before I show it to anyone. Yeah, okay, it is. Here, look at this. Juliana, we thank God for grace.
Okay.
Juliana, we thank God for grace.
Okay.
For guidance.
Then
For family.
it's value.
For friends.
It's a food.
For food, yes.
It's a rice.
For fries, yes.
For pasta.
For pasta, okay, yes.
The chicken nuggets.
For chicken nuggets. For wealth.
The
For health.
house.
For protection.
The potato.
And for peace.
It's a beef.
Amen.
Amen.
Good job.
The top.
I love you.
I love you.
If that's not the cutest thing you've ever seen in your life, then you probably have kids of your own. But that's like, it's hard when when you're like, my experiences with God and with theism are so unique, and they really are. Everybody's is unique, but mine is especially unique. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this. It's like I couldn't be doing this. I couldn't be live streaming about this stuff. But wouldn't have sentient singularity theory, which is basically monotheism in the context of our scientific observations. It's not a religion or anything. It's just it's a metaphysics model. And if anybody wants like a religious community or anything like that, like that's a journey that they should go on themselves. And I see truth in pretty much every major world religion. There are things, you look at the fruit of something to see if it's good. Look at how people who focus on it behave, and are they joyful? Are they kind? Big one. Are they kind? Are they more focused with doing with figuring out what is the right thing and what would be the wrong thing, as opposed to who is bad and who is good? Are they forming families and being fruitful and multiplying? Like if you look at Scientology, people are not, it doesn't cause people to have like beautiful families. If you look at Mormonism, it does seem to. And, you might not think that I don't know, if you're part of one theological tradition, Mormonism might not make any sense to you. But if you look at like people who actually are observant Jews, they have beautiful families and they get married, they're modest, and they value modesty. Um, and this is like when, again, like you want to be pro something, and like people are like, anti immodesty, anti like pornography and things like that. And I get that. And I think that, yeah, you should be, but it's not even that shouldn't be the top of mind. You should be pro modesty, um, and pro marriage, pro, um, you know, children, not anti-abortion, like pro children, not anti-porn, pro modesty, um, pro marriage, pro goodness first. Then let your anti ideologies or the things that you are against be emergent from just naturally from what you're for. If you're pro modesty, you can't be pro. You are intrinsically anti anything that is immodest. But it's because you're pro modesty. So, and if you look at like, a community and it's like modest and married and children and kindness and charity and like, they're not eating each other, and I don't mean that literally. I mean like, everybody, if you go to like a big city, everybody's just trying to conquer each other. And that's not good. Like that's a community that is like got truth enough in it that it's fruit is beautiful. That's really what you should look for if you're judging something. What's the fruit? Again, to quote a very, very wise man who lived a long time ago, judge something by its fruit. Like that's what I want people to. I want sentient singularity theory, and this project can help people understand why you judge something by its fruit, and why you kind of have to because you can't know everything. So you kind of I tried to read the Book of Mormon. I can't. I can actually like every scripture has its own like language, even if it's translated into English. Like it's still in its own language, and I don't speak Mormon. I tried. It's the one scripture that I just was like, I have no idea what's going on here. But I mean, I can read the Quran and I can get it, and I can read the New Testament and I can get it, and I could read the Old Testament and I could get it. And I tried reading the Book of Mormon and I was like, I don't get it. But I look at the fruit and I'm like, this is good. That doesn't mean everybody's experience in these communities is good, but that's because people are flawed. But yeah, but I was like, how do I start introducing my kids to God? This is how I did it. Gosh. Juliana, we thank God for grace, for guidance, for family, for friends, for food, yes, for fries, yes, for pasta, okay, yes, for chicken nuggets, for wealth, for health, for protection, and for peace. Amen. Thank you. But I think it's a good prayer. I knew when I was done with it, I was like, that's it. I went through a few different versions, and then I was like, I think I've nailed it. Let me know in the comments. Happiness is the moment of being happy that comes, does not stay. It is the moment of happiness. That's happiness. Exactly. How do you feel about how God sees suicide? I don't think God wants us to commit suicide. I don't. It's interesting because in the East, in Eastern cultures that are more collectivistic, like Japanese culture and Chinese culture, like suicide is considered like honorable because you don't want to be seen as like dragging the group down. and it makes me think like, is there something to that I don't understand? Is it about context? I don't know, but I think in general, like God chose to have us live here, and we should also let Him choose when that time is up. Um, yeah, that's what I think. I think it's the safest bet, but I'm not gonna. But looking at like Japanese and Chinese culture, like there's, I don't know. There's, I'm not gonna say they're right or wrong. I don't really know. Um, it's such a different context of suicide than ours is. Ours is you commit suicide when things get tough. Theirs is like they view it as like they are sacrificing and for the group, like they're doing something for someone else. It's not like they just trying to end suffering. Um, Terrence Howard. Any thoughts on Terrence Howard? Um, uh, um, but uh, Terrence Howard, I forgot what he looks like, but I recognize the name. Let's look him up. I think, oh yeah, Terrence Howard. Of course, I know Terrence Howard. I think he sees something that's true, and he's not very good at expressing at describing it. That's what I think. There's a lot of people like that. I think he's not a fool, but I don't. I think that most people really struggle when you get a glimpse of like that which is beyond like the context of our language. Most people struggle. Um, Again, a Jew telling God how creation works. Maybe the third question is, am I right? I don't know. Maybe that's true. That's a good one. Not good for the steering. Okay, wait. Anyways, I'm gonna go. I'd like to share something with you. You should send me a private message on Instagram. But yeah, you should join our Discord and you can share it with me. I have calls on there sometimes, and uh, if anybody wants to join them, or join that community, private message me on Instagram. I'll send you the link. Good way to put Terrence Japanese. Yes, I believe the context. Yeah, it's different. Must go to bed. Yep, me too. All right, everyone. Thank you, and please hit the like button. Peace.